The moving truck pulled away from what used to be my home, leaving tire marks on the pristine driveway like a final insult. I stood there holding a cardboard box labeled Dave's Crap in my ex-wife's perfect handwriting, watching my old life disappear around the corner. "The kids have a real father now," Maggie had said that morning, her voice dripping with satisfaction as she adjusted her new diamond bracelet. "Richard can give them everything you never could." Richard, the real estate mogul with his penthouse views and wine collection worth more than my annual salary, the man who'd swept my wife off her feet while I was busy being a faithful husband and decent father. Nothing says real dad like a black Amex and a wine cellar you need Google Maps to navigate, I muttered, climbing into my beat-up Honda. My phone buzzed. A text from my daughter, Emma. "Dad, Richard's taking us to Paris next week. Mom says you can't afford anything like that." 14 years old and already learning to twist the knife. Thanks, Maggie. I drove to my childhood home on Long Island, the house I'd inherited when my parents died 5 years ago, but never had the heart to clean out properly. The neighbors probably thought I was crazy, a 38-year-old divorced engineer moving back to his old bedroom, but it beat the studio apartment I could actually afford. The house smelled like dust and memories. I dumped my box in the living room and headed upstairs, drawn by some inexplicable urge to face my past head-on. The attic ladder creaked under my weight, protesting after years of neglect. Boxes everywhere. Christmas decorations, old photo albums, my father's tools. And there, wedged behind a trunk of winter clothes, something I'd never seen before. A metal briefcase with my name engraved on a small brass plate. David Michael Harrison, it read in formal script. The lock was old but sturdy. I found a crowbar in my dad's toolbox and pried it open, expecting maybe some old family photos or my grandfather's war medals. Instead, I found documents, legal papers, bank statements, corporate filings, all bearing the letterhead of Harrison Development Corporation. My hands shook as I read. My grandfather hadn't been just a small-time contractor like I'd always been told. He'd built half of downtown Nassau County. Shopping centers, office buildings, residential developments. The company was worth millions. And according to his will, dated just months before his death 20 years ago, it all belonged to me. I sat back on my heels, mind reeling. The will was crystal clear. Upon my grandfather's death, the company and all its assets were to be held in trust until my 35th birthday, then transferred to me completely. No conditions, no strings attached. I was 38 years old. I should have owned this for 3 years. My phone rang. My Uncle Frank. "Davey, heard you moved back to the old place. Listen, your aunt and I were thinking maybe it's time to sell. We could split the proceeds, help you get back on your feet." "Frank," I said slowly, "tell me about Grandpa's company." Silence, then, "What company?" "Dad had a little contracting business, went under when he died. You know that. Harrison Development Corporation, ring a bell?" The line went dead. I called my cousin Jimmy, my mother's sister's son, who'd always acted like the family's financial advisor. Same story. Grandpa was just a working man, died broke, left nothing but the house. But the documents didn't lie. Bank statements showing millions in assets. Property deeds. Corporate tax returns filed every year since my grandfather's death, showing consistent profits. Someone had been running my company. Someone had been collecting my money. And I had a pretty good idea who. I called the law firm listed on the letterhead. Morrison, Phillips and Associates, the same firm where my ex-wife worked as a paralegal, the same firm that had handled our divorce. "I'd like to speak with someone about Harrison Development Corporation," I told the receptionist. "I'll transfer you to Mr. Phillips." Robert Phillips came on the line, his voice smooth as silk. "Mr. Harrison, what a surprise. How can I help you?" "You can start by explaining why I'm just now finding out I own a multi-million-dollar company." Another pause. "I think there's been some confusion. Perhaps we should meet in person to discuss this." "No confusion on my end, Bob. I've got my grandfather's will right here. Pretty clear reading. Mr. Harrison, I strongly advise you not to take any precipitous action. There are complexities to your situation that require careful handling. The only complexity I see is how my own family and my ex-wife's law firm have been stealing from me for 3 years." "That's a very serious accusation." I hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing. Frank, Jimmy, my Aunt Carol, even my ex-mother-in-law. Word traveled fast in this family. I let them all go to voicemail and started making copies of everything. The will, the bank statements, the corporate filings. If they wanted to play games, I'd play by their rules. But first, I had a penthouse to visit. The doorman at Richard's building looked at me like I was there to rob the place. Fair enough, my jeans and work boots probably weren't the usual attire for residents of Manhattan's most exclusive address. I'm here to see my children, I told him. Emma and Michael Harrison. He made a show of calling upstairs, speaking in hushed tones. Finally, he handed me a visitor's badge. Penthouse level. Elevators to your right. The elevator was mirrored on 3 sides, forcing me to confront my appearance. I looked tired, angry, and about 10 years older than my age. Perfect. Maggie answered the door in a silk robe that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, annoyance, and finally that practiced smile she'd perfected during our marriage. Dave, what are you doing here? The kids are getting ready for school. We need to talk. If this is about the custody schedule, it's about Harrison Development Corporation. Her smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Mind if I come in? She stepped aside reluctantly. The penthouse was everything I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Richard sat at a granite breakfast bar, reading the Wall Street Journal and sipping coffee from a cup that probably cost more than my car payment. Dave, he said without looking up, bit early for a social call, isn't it? Dad! Emma ran over and hugged me, still in her pajamas. What are you doing here? Just wanted to see you before school, sweetheart. Michael, my 10-year-old, was more reserved. He'd been pulling away since the divorce, seduced by Richard's promises of expensive toys and exotic vacations. Kids, go get dressed, Maggie said firmly. Your father and I need to discuss something. When they were gone, I pulled out the documents and spread them on Richard's pristine coffee table. Interesting reading. I said, turns out, I'm not the broke loser you thought you married, Maggie. I'm actually worth about $15 million. Richard's newspaper crumpled slightly in his hands. Maggie went very still. I don't understand, she said. My grandfather's company, the one you've been helping your boss steal from for the past 3 years, the one that's been paying for your new lifestyle while I scraped by on an engineer's salary. Richard stood up slowly. He was taller than me, broader, with the kind of presence that came from years of closing million-dollar deals. I think you should leave. I think you should shut up and let your wife explain how she's been committing fraud. Fraud? Maggie's voice went shrill. Dave, you're being ridiculous. If there was any money, don't you think your family would have told you? My family's been in on it from the beginning. Uncle Frank's been signing documents as the interim administrator. Cousin Jimmy's been managing the accounts. And your boss Phillips has been laundering it all through his law firm. I pulled out a bank statement and pointed to a withdrawal from 6 months ago. $50,000. Same day you bought that BMW. Coincidence? The color drained from her face. You want to know the really funny part? I continued. I was ready to accept being the failure you always said I was, ready to fade away quietly and let you have your perfect new life. But you couldn't resist twisting the knife, could you? The kids have a real father now. Well, guess what? Their real father just became very, very rich. Richard moved toward me, but I held up a hand. I wouldn't if I were you. Assault charges tend to complicate real estate licenses. Emma and Michael appeared in the hallway, dressed for school, but clearly having heard raised voices. What's going on? Emma asked. I looked at my children, then at my ex-wife, then at the man who'd stolen my family. Your mom and I are just working out some financial details. Nothing for you to worry about. I gathered up the documents. I'll be in touch, Maggie, through my lawyer, of course. I'm sure Mr. Phillips can recommend someone good. He's had plenty of practice lately. As I headed for the door, I heard Richard whisper urgently to Maggie, How much does he actually know? Everything, I called back without turning around. And that's just the beginning. The elevator doors closed on Maggie's panicked face, and I smiled for the first time in months. I met Tommy Rodriguez at Mickey's Tavern, the same dive bar where we'd celebrated our high school graduation 20 years ago. Tommy had been my best friend back then, before life took us in different directions. He'd become a cop, then a private investigator after a bullet in the shoulder convinced him to seek safer employment. So let me get this straight, Tommy said, nursing his second beer. Your ex-wife, your family, and her law firm have been stealing millions from you for 3 years. That's the short version. And you want me to what exactly? Find out how deep this goes, who else is involved, how they've been moving the money. Tommy leaned back in his booth, studying me. You know what this sounds like to me, Dave? Sounds like you're looking for revenge. I'm looking for justice. Same thing usually. He pulled out a notebook. What do you know about the boyfriend? Richard Castellano. Owns Castellano Properties, specializes in commercial real estate. Net worth somewhere north of $50 million. And he's been spending your money on your ex-wife. Looks that way, Tommy made notes. I'll need a retainer, $2,000 up front. I slid an envelope across the table. There's 5, find everything. Dave, Tommy's voice was serious now. These people aren't going to roll over. If they've been stealing from you for 3 years, they've got a lot to lose. Things could get ugly. They already are ugly, Tommy. I'm just evening the odds. 3 days later, Tommy called with his first report. We met at the same bar, but this time he looked troubled. Your ex-wife's been busy, he said, sliding a folder across the table. The affair started 2 years before your divorce. She was feeding information about your family's finances to Phillips the whole time. I opened the folder. Photos of Maggie and Richard at restaurants, hotels, his office. Bank records showing transfers from Harrison Development to various accounts. Credit card statements for purchases I'd never seen. There's more, Tommy continued. Phillips isn't just stealing from you. He's been using your company as a front for money laundering. Pills money, mostly. Your grandfather's legitimate business has been turned into a criminal enterprise. My hands clenched around my beer bottle. How much? Best estimate? They've moved about $40 million through Harrison Development in the past 3 years. You were supposed to get 15. The rest came from other sources. Jesus, it gets worse. They know you're onto them. Phillips has been making calls trying to set up a meeting with you. Says he wants to work something out. What kind of something? My guess, they offer you a settlement. Maybe $1 million or $2 million to keep quiet and walk away. Make you think you're getting a good deal. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. $1 million to forget about my stolen inheritance and look the other way while they launder Pill's money. How generous. Dave, these aren't just white-collar criminals anymore. If they're moving Pill's money, they've got connections to people who solve problems permanently. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to keep you alive. I finished my beer and stood up. Keep digging, Tommy. I want to know everything, every account, every transaction, every person involved. What are you planning? I'm planning to take back what's mine. All of it. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by documents and photographs, planning my next move. The phone rang constantly. Family members demanding to know what I was doing, threatening legal action if I disrupted the family business. The family business. My business. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We should talk. There's more to this situation than you understand. RP. Robert Phillips. Ready to make his deal. I typed back, tomorrow. Mickey's Tavern on Northern Boulevard, 8 p.m. Come alone. His response was immediate. That's not the kind of place for this discussion. My office would be more appropriate. My terms or no deal. A long pause, then wing. I smiled and turned off the phone. Tomorrow, I'd start getting some answers. Phillips arrived at Mickey's exactly on time, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. His expensive suit and Italian leather shoes stood out like a neon sign among the working-class crowd. He spotted me in the back booth and made his way over, his discomfort obvious. Mr. Harrison, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Thank you for stealing my inheritance for 3 years. He winced. That's a complicated situation. Seems pretty simple to me. My grandfather left me a company. You've been running it and keeping the profits? Phillips glanced around nervously, then leaned forward. David, may I call you David? There are things about your grandfather's business that you don't understand. Things that would be problematic if they came to light. You mean the money laundering? His face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. I pulled out one of Tommy's reports and slid it across the table. $40 million in questionable transactions over 3 years. Pill's money, mostly, from what my investigator tells me. Phillips barely glanced at the papers. Your investigator is mistaken. Is he? Because it looks to me like you've been using my legitimate business as a front for criminal activity. That's a federal crime, Bob. RICO charges, money laundering, conspiracy. You're looking at 20 years minimum. You don't understand the situation you're in, Phillips said quietly. The people we're dealing with don't negotiate. They don't accept losses. If you disrupt this arrangement, you won't live to enjoy your inheritance. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Take the settlement I'm offering and disappear. It's the only way you survive this. I leaned back studying him. He was scared, but not of me. He was scared of his other partners, the ones providing the dirty money. What settlement? $2 million, clean money, no questions asked. In exchange, you sign over your rights to Harrison Development and never speak about any of this again. $2 million out of 15 that's rightfully mine, plus whatever you've made from your criminal activities. It's a generous offer, considering the circumstances. I pretended to consider it, watching him relax slightly. Then I smiled. Counteroffer, Bob. You transfer every penny back to me, shut down your money laundering operation, and I don't turn this evidence over to the FBI. That's not possible. Then we have a problem. Phillips stood up abruptly. You're making a mistake, David. A fatal one. The only mistake I made was trusting my family and my ex-wife. I won't make that error again. After he left, I sat in the bar for another hour, nursing my beer and thinking. Tommy had been right. These people weren't going to roll over. But they'd made one crucial error. They'd underestimated me. My phone buzzed. A text from Maggie. Dave, please call me. We need to talk about the kids. I ignored it. The kids were the one thing I wouldn't use as tools in this war, but that didn't mean I'd let Maggie manipulate me through them. Another text, this one from Emma. Dad, Mom says you're trying to take our house away. Is that true? I stared at the message, fury building in my chest. Maggie was already poisoning the children against me, using their fear to control the situation. I typed back, No, sweetheart. I would never hurt you or Michael. I love you both. Then why is Mom crying? Because your mother is a lying, stealing, cheating criminal who's finally facing consequences for her actions, I thought. But I couldn't say that to a 14-year-old girl. Sometimes adults have disagreements about money. It has nothing to do with how much I love you. Can you fix it, like you used to fix my bike? If only it were that simple. I'm working on it, Em. Everything will be okay. But even as I typed the words, I knew they weren't true. Nothing would ever be okay again. Too much had been stolen. Too many lies told. Too much trust broken. My phone rang. Tommy. We've got a problem, he said without preamble. What kind of problem? The kind that involves guys with tools asking questions about you around the neighborhood. Professional types, if you know what I mean. I felt ice in my veins. How professional? Professional enough that I'm calling from a payphone and suggesting you find somewhere else to sleep tonight. I looked around Mickey's with new eyes. The guy at the bar who'd been nursing the same drink since I arrived. The woman in the corner booth who kept checking her phone. Suddenly, the familiar surroundings felt like a trap. Where should I meet you? I asked. Remember where we used to go fishing when we were kids? Yeah, 1 hour. The line went dead. I left money on the table and walked out the back exit, my heart pounding. The war was escalating and I was starting to realize I might be outmatched. But I wasn't ready to surrender, not yet. The old fishing spot was a pier that jutted out into Long Island Sound, abandoned except for the occasional teenager looking for privacy. Tommy was already there when I arrived, smoking a cigarette and staring out at the dark water. Tell me, I said. 2 guys came by your house this afternoon, told the neighbors they were insurance investigators. Neighbors bought it, but insurance investigators don't drive $60,000 BMWs. Did they get inside? Don't think so, but they were watching the place for about an hour. Professional surveillance. I sat down on the pier beside him. Phillips warned me today. Said the people he's working with don't accept losses. You need to walk away, Dave. Take whatever settlement they're offering and disappear. I can't do that. Why not? It's just money. No, it's not. I picked up a stone and threw it into the water. It's my children's future. It's justice for my grandfather. It's making sure these bastards don't get away with stealing everything I should have had. Tommy flicked his cigarette into the sound. You're talking about revenge, not justice. Maybe they're the same thing. They're not, and you know it. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the water lap against the pier. Finally, Tommy spoke again. There might be another way. I'm listening. My contact at the FBI, Agent Sarah Chen. She's been working a task force on money laundering operations. If we can give her solid evidence, They'd shut down Philip's operation and arrest everyone involved. Your ex-wife, your family members, Phillips himself. They'd all go down. I considered it. Federal prison sentences. My children watching their mother led away in handcuffs. Emma and Michael would never forgive me. What about my company, my inheritance? The government would seize it as part of the investigation. You might get some of it back eventually, but it could take years. So I lose everything anyway. You stay alive. Another long silence. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Last chance, accept the settlement or face the consequences. I showed Tommy the message. That settles it, he said. We're calling Chen. Wait. An idea was forming in my mind, dangerous but potentially brilliant. What if there was a third option, such as, what if we could get them to destroy each other? Tommy looked at me suspiciously. What are you thinking? Phillips is scared of his criminal partners. They're scared of law enforcement. My family is scared of losing their stolen money. Maggie and Richard are scared of losing their lifestyle. And scared people make stupid decisions. What if we could turn them against each other? Dave, that's incredibly dangerous. You're talking about manipulating criminals and violent people. I'm talking about using their own greed and paranoia against them. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. What do you need me to do? First, I need you to arrange a meeting with Agent Chen, but not to turn over evidence, to make a deal. What kind of deal? The kind where I work with the FBI to bring down a major money laundering operation in exchange for immunity and the return of my stolen assets. You want to go undercover? I want to be the bait that brings them all down. Tommy shook his head. This is insane. This is justice. This is revenge, and it's going to get you ended. I stood up and brushed off my jeans. Maybe. But at least my kids will inherit what's rightfully theirs instead of dirty money. And if you don't survive? I looked out at the dark water, thinking about my grandfather building his company from nothing, about my children growing up thinking their father was a failure, about Maggie and Phillips and all the others who'd stolen not just my money, but my dignity. Then at least I'll die fighting for something that matters. Tommy stubbed out another cigarette. When do you want to meet with Chen? Tomorrow and Tommy? Yeah, after tomorrow, if something happens to me, make sure Emma and Michael know the truth, all of it. He nodded grimly. You got it. As we walked back to our cars, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, I had a plan. It was dangerous, possibly reckless, but it was mine. And if I played it right, everyone who'd betrayed me would pay the price. Agent Sarah Chen looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for an FBI financial crime specialist. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from putting white-collar criminals behind bars for a living. We met at a coffee shop in Midtown Manhattan, far from anywhere Phillips or his associates might be watching. Mr. Harrison, she said, settling into the booth across from me. Tommy tells me you have information about a money laundering operation. I have more than information. I have an opportunity. I slid a folder across the table containing copies of everything Tommy had uncovered. She flipped through it methodically, her expression growing more interested with each page. Harrison Development Corporation, she said finally. We've had this company on our radar for 6 months. Suspicious transaction patterns, but we could never get close enough to gather evidence. That's because the owner didn't know his company was being used for criminal activity. You're the owner? Legally, yes. Practically, it's been controlled by my ex-wife's law firm and my extended family since my grandfather died. Chen leaned back, studying me. And you want to help us build a case against them. I want to help you build a case against everyone involved. The lawyers, my family, the criminal organizations providing the dirty money, all of them. In exchange for immunity from prosecution and the return of my legitimate assets. That's not how this works, Mr. Harrison. We don't make deals with criminals. I'm not a criminal, I'm a victim. Who's now proposing to work undercover against dangerous people? That makes you either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. She closed the folder and signaled the waitress for more coffee. What exactly are you proposing? Phillips and his partners think they have me cornered. They've made threats, sent people to watch my house, offered me a settlement to disappear. They're confident they're in control. And what if I accept their settlement, but with conditions? What if I demand to meet with their other partners, to understand the full scope of the operation before I agree to keep quiet? Chen's eyes narrowed. You want to get them to incriminate themselves. I want to get them to trust me enough to show me everything. Bank accounts, transaction records, the names of their criminal partners, everything you need to shut them down permanently. While wearing a wire. She was quiet for a long moment, considering. It's dangerous. These people have already threatened you. If they discover you're working with us, they won't. How can you be sure? Because they think I'm desperate and scared. They think I'll do anything to protect my children and get some money out of this mess. And you're not desperate and scared? I thought about Emma's text asking if I was going to take away her house, about Michael pulling away from me because Richard could offer him things I never could, about sleeping in my childhood bedroom while my ex-wife lived in a penthouse bought with my stolen money. I'm terrified, I admitted, but I'm more angry than scared, and that makes me dangerous. Chen made notes on a legal pad. We'd need extensive preparation, multiple meetings to establish your cover story, backup surveillance, emergency protocols. How long? 2 weeks minimum. I don't have 2 weeks. Phillips is getting nervous, and his criminal partners are getting impatient. If I don't respond to their threats soon, they'll either disappear or eliminate the problem permanently. The problem being you. The problem being me. She tapped her pen against the table, thinking. There is another option. We've been developing a case against the Torino crime family for money laundering. If your company is one of their fronts, you could use me to get to them. We could use you to get to everyone. Phillips, your family, the Torinos, and anyone else involved in this operation. I felt a chill of excitement mixed with terror. The Torino family wasn't just dangerous. They were legendary for their violence against anyone who crossed them. What would I have to do? Exactly what you suggested. Accept their settlement, but demand a meet with all the partners. We'll wire you up, provide backup, and document everything. And afterward? Afterward, if you survive, you'll testify in federal court against some very dangerous people. You'll need to relocate, probably change your identity. What about my children? They'd be relocated with you if they choose to come. I thought about Emma and Michael, about ripping them away from their mother and the only life they'd known, about asking them to give up everything because their father had chosen revenge over safety. I need some time to think about this. You have until tomorrow. After that, the offer expires. She stood up and handed me a business card. Mr. Harrison, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. These people destroyed your life and stole your children's inheritance. They deserve to pay for that. And if something goes wrong, then at least you'll go down fighting. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at her business card and thinking about my choices. I could take Philip's settlement and disappear, leaving my children to grow up believing their father was a coward and a failure. I could turn over the evidence and hope the government eventually returns some of my assets. Or I could fight back against everyone who'd betrayed me, knowing that victory might cost me everything, including my life. My phone buzzed. Another text from Phillips. Decision time, David, yes or no? I typed back, yes, but I want to meet with all your partners first. If I'm going to keep quiet about this operation, I need to know exactly what I'm keeping quiet about. His response came quickly. That can be arranged. Tomorrow night. I stared at the message for a long moment, then called Agent Chen. It's Dave Harrison, I said when she answered. I'm in. Are you sure? I'm sure. Then God help us all. The FBI field office in Manhattan looked exactly like every cop show I'd ever watched. Fluorescent lights, cheap furniture, and the kind of institutional beige that sucked the life out of everything. Agent Chen led me through a maze of cubicles to a conference room where 2 technicians were setting up recording equipment. This is Agent Martinez and Agent Johnson, Chen said. They'll be handling your technical support. Martinez, a compact man with careful hands, held up a device about the size of a matchbook. Digital recorder, good for about 6 hours of crystal clear audio. We'll tape it to your chest, under your shirt. What if they search me? They won't, Johnson said. These aren't street criminals expecting police informants. They're white-collar criminals who think they're dealing with a desperate victim. And if I'm wrong about that, then the recorder won't matter anyway, Martinez said grimly. They spent 2 hours going over the plan. I would meet Phillips at his law office, accept the settlement terms, but insist on meeting the other partners before signing anything. The goal was to get them all in one room, talking freely about the money laundering operation. Remember, Chen said, you're not trying to be a detective. You're playing a scared victim who wants reassurance that keeping quiet is the right choice. Let them talk. Let them brag. Let them incriminate themselves. What if they want me to do something illegal? Agree to it, but don't actually do it. We'll arrest everyone before any additional crimes are committed. And my family, my ex-wife, they'll all be arrested as part of the conspiracy. I'm sorry, but there's no way to protect them from the consequences of their choices. I thought about Emma and Michael, about having to explain why their mother was in federal prison. My kids don't know about any of this. They'll be taken care of. Child services will work with us to minimize the trauma. Child services. Foster care, maybe, or living with relatives who'd probably blame me for destroying the family. I pushed the thoughts away and focused on the immediate problem. What's my backup? Surveillance van across the street, agents in the building's lobby, and a tactical team 2 blocks away. If things go wrong, we'll be there in under 3 minutes. That's comforting. Mr. Harrison, Chen said seriously, you can still back out. We have enough evidence from your documents to build a case without your testimony. It might take longer, and we might not catch everyone, but... Oh! I stood up and let Martinez tape the recorder to my chest. These people stole my life. They destroyed my marriage, turned my children against me, and made me believe I was a failure. They don't get to walk away from that. This isn't about justice anymore, is it? Johnson asked. This is personal. Everything's personal when it's your family they've destroyed. An hour later, I walked into the offices of Morrison, Phillips & Associates wearing a wire and carrying enough rage to power a small city. The receptionist, a young woman who'd probably processed some of the fraudulent documents, smiled brightly and told me Mr. Phillips was waiting in the conference room. The conference room was all mahogany and leather, designed to impress clients with the firm's success. Phillips sat at the head of a long table, flanked by 2 men I didn't recognize. One was elderly, distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. The other was younger, harder looking, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much violence. Now, David, Phillips said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. I'd like you to meet my partners. This is Judge Morrison, the senior partner of our firm. The elderly man nodded gravely. A judge, corrupt, but still a judge. The FBI would love this. And this is Mr. Torino, who represents our other business interests. Torino. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was screaming. Vincent Torino, underboss of the Torino crime family. The FBI hadn't just been developing a case against them. They'd been hunting this man specifically for 15 years. Sit down, David, Phillips said. We have a lot to discuss. I sat, acutely aware of the recorder against my chest and the fact that I was now in a room with 3 men who wouldn't hesitate to end me if they knew the truth. Before we proceed, I said, I want to understand exactly what I'm agreeing to keep quiet about. My investigator found some disturbing information about my company's recent activities. Torino leaned forward, studying me with those dead eyes. What kind of information? Money laundering, large cash deposits, suspicious transfers, connections to criminal organizations. Phillips looked nervous, but Judge Morrison chuckled. Your investigator is very thorough. He's expensive, but he's good. And now you want to know how deep this goes, Torino said. It wasn't a question. If I'm going to keep quiet about criminal activity, I need to know what kind of criminal activity. If the FBI comes knocking, I need to know what I'm not telling them. The 3 men exchanged glances. Then Torino smiled, and I felt ice in my veins. Fair enough, he said. Your company has been very useful to us, Mr. Harrison. We move money through Harrison Development, clean it up through real estate transactions, and everybody makes a profit. How much money? Over the past 3 years? About $40 million. Jesus! Your grandfather built a very legitimate business, Judge Morrison added. Perfect for our needs. Clean books, established credit, no criminal associations. Until now, Phillips agreed. But that's all changing. We're shutting down the operation, liquidating the assets, and moving our business elsewhere. What about my inheritance? You'll get your settlement, Torino said. $2 million as agreed. The rest of the assets will be redistributed. To who? To people who've earned it, Torino said, his voice carrying a clear threat. I pretended to consider this, letting them think I was weighing my options. And if I refuse the settlement? Then you'll have an accident, Torino said matter-of-factly. Car crash, maybe, happens all the time. That's homicide. That's business. Judge Morrison leaned back in his chair. David, you seem like an intelligent man. You understand the situation. Take the money, relocate somewhere far away, and live a quiet life. Your children will be provided for. What does that mean? It means they'll continue to enjoy the lifestyle they've become accustomed to, Philip said. Richard Castellano will see to that. Richard's involved in this too? Richard's been very helpful, Torino said. His real estate expertise has been invaluable for laundering our money. I felt sick. My children's stepfather wasn't just complicit. He was an active participant in the criminal conspiracy that had destroyed my life. So everyone's been lying to me, I said. My family, my ex-wife, her new husband, you people, everyone. Everyone's been protecting their interests, Judge Morrison corrected, just as you should protect yours. Torino slid a document across the table. Settlement agreement. Sign it, take your money, and disappear. I picked up the pen, letting them think I was ready to surrender. The recorder was capturing everything, the admissions of money laundering, the death threats, the conspiracy involving a federal judge and a crime family underboss. Then I set the pen down. I need some time to think about this. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Time is something you don't have, Torino said quietly. One day, I said, give me one day to get my affairs in order, say goodbye to my kids. Then I'll sign your paper and disappear. Phillips looked at Judge Morrison, who looked at Torino. Finally, Torino nodded. 24 hours. He could. After that, the offer expires permanently. I stood up, my legs shaky, but my voice steady. I'll be in touch. As I walked out of the conference room, I heard Torino say to Phillips, if he doesn't sign tomorrow, take care of it. I made it to the elevator before my hands started shaking. The recorder had captured everything, but now I had less than 24 hours before they decided to eliminate me permanently. Time to end this war once and for all.